who I think is having a few Wi-Fi issues at the beginning, but hopefully she's here with us. And she's going to start us off by introducing herself and telling us a little bit about her books.
Hi. Well, some of you may have had an introduction before, but here's so I'm the author of Hannah Bridge, and 4 books with number 5 coming out in January in the 90s. And Hannah is a freelance journalist who gets involved in investigations that take her into dark places. And all the first book were originally published by Boom Publications, which, as many of you may know, has now ceased publishing. And so all of these books are going to be reissued as new editions for Red Dog Press. And if you, I have been, although these are my only novels, I have written loads of short stories and flash fiction, and also I written 7 non-fiction books as well. That was previous to that, with my other life as a journalist. Right.
Oh, exciting. What are your non-fiction books about?
Mainly, when I started off, the first book I did was a history book. It was a history of women in sport, things I know nothing about at all. So obviously I did a lot of research for that one, and that one was for Wayland, Wayland. And then I did another book, and so it was a school book. And I did another book that was about pregnancy, teenage pregnancy. Again, it was a school book. And then I wrote a book about only children, and then applying to university, surviving university, and 2 books on parenting, linked to my parenting website, which is Living with Teenagers and Discipline. So in a nutshell, that's me.
Nice. Did you choose to make Hannah a journalist because you'd been one?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the first book, when Hannah interviews a prostitute and a policeman, I actually did that for the News of the World magazine. And after I'd done the interviews and written it up and everything, in fact, they didn't use it for the newspaper because they said it was too traumatic. So I thought, oh, well, that's a shame. But I mean, they still paid me, so that wasn't too bad. And then one day I thought, oh, one day I was putting my baby to bed, and I heard somebody knock on the door. And I went to investigate, and there was nobody at the door, so that was a bit chilling. But I thought, what if? So when I'd actually interviewed the real prostitute, I had to pay her in cash. And what the newspaper had biked over the cash to me in an envelope, and obviously it had my name and address on it, and that's what I'd handed to the prostitute. So I'd thought afterwards, that was a bit stupid because she now knows where to find me, and that is what happens in the book. So yes, that all started from there, and I hadn't really planned it to be a series at all. Although I did write 3 chapters of the next one. But it didn't go anywhere, so I just left it to percolate for quite some time.
So Sam's said hello.
And so hi, Sam.
So is Andrew from Nottingham. Sam and me are both big fans of the Hannah Wadebridge series. Like, we've both, I think Sam might have read slightly more of them than me, but we're sort of we're competing to see who's read the most. And Sam wants to know if Hannah, she says, Hannah's a fantastic character, which is true. Other than your career, are there any other similarities between you and Hannah?
Yes. She lives in my house. She lives in my area. She's a single parent, as I am. What else? And I think that's about where it stops, really. I mean, some of my friends would say, or have said, oh, well, yes, that's the sort of thing you would say, you know, if in a conversation or something. But I don't think that's particularly true. And she does things that I would never dream of doing, you know, in a million years. So she's my alter ego in some ways, because she goes off. It's a bit like Superwoman, you know, sort of. She goes off and does wonderful things, and I sit at home and go like this on the write about it and frighten myself.
What really stands out for me about the series is like the lovely cast of characters that go around Hannah. I'm thinking of like some of my favourites are the guy who works in the station, or who doesn't work in, but you know what I mean, the station guy.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I think Sam, well, she'll correct me, but I think Sam rather like Sam as well. Sam Smith, his name is, and he does appear in number 5 as well. He just does a sort of walk on part in number 4. He just sort of says hello at London Bridge, sort of thing, you know, quick chat on London Bridge. But he does come back in number 5. I think it's what I like about having a series is that you've got a group of characters, the ones who survive anyway, you know, who you know, yourself with your own friends, they sort of, you know, you see lots of somebody and then you don't see lots of somebody, and there's a sort of ebb and flow of how often you see people. And I think that happens in the Hannah Weybridge series as well, so that sometimes she'll be more linked to so and so, and then she won't have seen somebody else for, you know, months, sort of thing, which is what I love, you know. I mean, and also you've got the set of characters there, and you can think, well, how can so and so quickly step in and help her, or not, as the case may be, you know. So yes, I do like having a group of characters.
But they crop up in unusual places as well. So I like the one who comes back as a supply teacher.
Ah, yes. Well, he's disappeared from. Yes, I suppose I don't want to say too much in case people haven't read one of the books but he is an amazing hero in book 2, and has been part of another group of people that Hannah has been with. I suppose I can say the down and outs in the Waterloo Bullring. So he's been there, and then he does save her life, basically. So I like him as well. But I did bring him back at another time, and I wrote these lovely things, and then I took it all out again. I just thought, no, but I think, you know, he's there to come back. But and so I've still got all these chapters, you know, when I've had it, you know, I've written and then just sort of said to myself, no, I'm sorry, that's a bit too much of a coincidence on that one. But I did like the supply teacher bit of it, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Sam says she does like Sam very much. He's great. Would you be tempted to write? I feel like you especially could have spin-off stories and spin-off like novellas about the other characters in Hannah's series, because they're so rich and interesting.
Thank you. Yes, that's actually what I was sitting thinking about that today, actually, that, you know, that there are some characters that you could yes, have a novella or a short story or something about other characters. I mean, one of the characters that I really like is D.I. Claudia Turner, and I know, well, she and I have been communicating about her past, but she's got a whole past that one day will come to the fore, but you don't really know very much about her. And she and Hannah didn't really hit it off at the beginning, and they become more friendly as the books go on. And I'd quite like to. Yes, I think, you know, it'd be quite fun. I also started a book that was set sort of contemporary, so it would be 30 years on, sort of thing, to see. But Hannah wouldn't necessarily have been there. But, you know, her grown-up daughter by then.
Oh, that would have been great. I was thinking James as well. James would be a good.
Oh, I love James. I sort of fall in love with some of the characters. And the other character that I really like, I mean, I love James anyway, and really he quite loves Hannah. but they never seem to realise this. It's a bit like a romance, really, some of this, you know. But I also like, now I'm not going to be able to remember his name, but there's a QC who I've got who appears now. Excuse me, sorry. And I quite like him. I think he's a sort of Michael Mansfield type, you know, sort of coming in and saving the day legally, as it were. So yeah, so I do yes, I do like my characters. Well, I don't like all of them, obviously, because some of them I think are horrible and I kill them off.
I was just going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you which are the ones that you really don't like. Who are the ones that are alive that you don't like?
Well, I don't know. I think Hannah gets tetchy with a few people. In book 5, there's a new. In book 5, the guy who's been, the guy who is the detective sergeant actually is promoted in book 5, so he's a DI by the time he gets to book 5, and he and Hannah started off really on the wrong foot, but they are actually friends now, and he's got a sergeant with him who is really unpleasant to Hannah, and he will get his comeuppance, because I don't like him either. Yes, and of course, as you and I know anyway, that there is a Caroline Marston in number 5. So, and I think that will be an interesting one for you to read. I mean, she's not based on you, obviously, so because I don't know you very well, but it's your name. So I hope you won't feel offended by any of it.
No, I think the conversation came about, didn't it, when I said I'd quite happily be a villain in a book. Yes. So I'm happy for you to do with me what you want.
Yeah. Well, it's all done now. It's with Red Dog. So yes, I think she keeps you guessing on that one. So that's quite a good one. And I didn't. No, I suppose really the characters that I don't like, I kill off. You know, and I kill off some of the ones I do like as well. So that's.
I'm trying to think if there's any. I'm a bit ambivalent to James, if I'm honest.
Oh, okay.
Unusual. I'm quite partial to James's. I'm married to one. But you're James.
You don't like him?
Not a big fan. No. I don't know.
Is it? Well, it doesn't really matter.
Not in there.
And then there's another one. His neighbour Mark, who's in the army, he sort of appears and disappears in book 4. So that's and I quite like. I think he's quite nice. He's quite a nice guy. I think in 3 and 4, and he sort of manages to save the day, and he's sort of on the ball with people, you know, who might be. He intercedes when Hannah's being followed at one stage and that sort of thing. So, not that she's a wimp by any means at all. You know, she's quite able to stand up for herself and gets herself out of some tricky situations. So,
Sam wants to know if you've ever conducted any unusual research during the course of your career.
Oh, Sam said Simon. That's the QC. Yes, yes, Sam. It is Simon. Well, I suppose the interviewing a lot of prostitutes. For the first one, I did interview quite a lot of prostitutes, so that was more unusual than my normal thing. I have sat with myself with a knife at my throat to see how far you could go, you know, to make it feel real without it being real, sort of thing. So I've done that. Most of the research, fortunately, has been for other people, but I always check sources by, you know, always prime sources, at least 3, to find out. And so I might sort of look at areas, you know, if I'm walking, I've often walked around an area where I'm going or where the characters are or something like that. I did think it was, I did see one review where somebody had said that he never heard of a journalist being invited to all these posh places and blah, blah, blah. And the silliest thing was I had been invited to all of them as a journalist, you know, so I hadn't made that bit up, you know. So I think it's quite, I think, you know, you hear other people saying, oh, that person could, you know, doesn't know a thing about probation officers, and they were a probation officer, you know. It just, you seem to get told off for the things you actually know the most about.
How do you, say you want to go and interview a group of prostitutes for your book, how do you go about finding
I didn't well, for the first some of them, they were in a documentary about prostitution at King's Cross and how the police were clearing up the area. So that was, so I got them via the company there. And I also went to the English Collective of Prostitutes to get first-hand information from them as well. So that's how they're quite cagey about things.
Yeah, I can imagine. Sam wants to know if you ever create characters based on real people just to kill them off.
Yes. Yes, I have done.
Must be one of the best things about being an author.
Yeah, it's especially if somebody's really, really unpleasant. And it's not many, to be perfectly honest, but sometimes you think, actually, you don't use the same character, but you might put the situation or the way they have behaved or reacted to you, and use that in your fiction, in one's fiction. Yes. Yeah.
Andrew from Nottingham wants to know, when you do your research, have you ever been around Police HQ to help you?
I've got I have been to the police, and I also have, very lucky to have a couple of friends who are in the police as well. So I've used, you know, I use them a lot. One of them actually works sort of in complaints and everything, and so she helps with, and not only is she good, but she's got all the contacts to get me what I do need to know, you know, which is good. And yes, so then, yeah, so I use my friends mercilessly.
Is there an expert that you don't yet know that you'd like to sort of have contact with?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose it depends on where the next book goes, really, because each time I try and find somebody that that knows or would know. So I can't think offhand, because I'm not writing a new Hannah at the moment. So I'm not sort of thinking about what I can do, really. I have I have some great medical friends, so they always help me with quite a lot of the situations, actually. And then if I get anything wrong, you know, as you know, always in the acknowledgements, it's my fault if I get it wrong, sort of thing. But for book 5, I had 2 scenes where I needed some medical input so that I knew what I could say and couldn't say. And one of my friends, I mean, he just loved it. He was just sort of like, great, you know. So what you could do is this, or you could try, you know, if you really want to kill somebody off. And, you know, so I often sort of say, would, and also to just check that things were available in 94, for instance. You know, because sometimes you think now, oh, you could do this, but in fact, in 1994, you didn't have the availability of that. So yes, so I'm quite lucky with my friends. I choose well.
Why 1994?
Because, well, the first one's in 1993, which was exactly the year that I interviewed the prostitute. So that's where it started.
Ah,
So I sort of, because that was contemporary to what I was doing. So yes, and it's very, it's I like the 90s, and when I'm actually trying to write a standalone psychological thriller, and I'd started that after book 4 in Petition, after Petition's Child, and when we had lockdown, I found it really difficult to write, to concentrate, and then I thought, well, maybe if I go back to Hannah, if I go back to the 90s, and that was lovely because I could go back and everybody could hug each other, and I didn't have to worry about COVID-19 or anything at all, and so I did find that I found it very therapeutic actually to go back into the 90s. So yeah, that's me opting out. I wouldn't write one with a COVID situation anyway, so it'd have to be before or way after.
Fair enough. So you were being a journalist in 1994?
Yes, I still do a bit of journalism now anyway, so yes, yeah. So I've been, and a lot of the, I have interviewed so many people that a lot of that comes out, I can use that as research for the books, I mean, yeah, so I use what I've got and what I've done.
I was trying to think what I was doing in 1994. I was in secondary school.
Oh, that makes me old, doesn't it?
Sorry.
Right? Yeah, well, there you go, you see.
In the Midlands.
I think what I particularly like about the 90s as well is, although we had mobile phones, the internet was really just kicking off. I did have, I had an email account, I used the internet, but not very much, and I had a dial-up internet connection.
Well, it was ridiculously slow, wasn't it? Like dial-up internet.
Yeah. And I had, I was one of the, first of all, I had a pager, and then I had, a large mobile phone that you could just about use if you, sort of held it up in the right direction, sort of thing. So you have to sort of work harder. You could, I mean, now you could just sort of find out where somebody is by just where their phone is, which you couldn't do in the 90s, or certainly early 90s anyway. I mean, I found it really fascinating because I was standing near where I live, and I saw an altercation between two men, one on a bike and one was, and it was really getting quite heated. And I just thought, I don't think I can just stand here and watch this. So, called the police, and it was so funny because the controller who picked it up said, yeah, and this woman is standing on the crossroads between X and Y. And I thought, oh, and that was quite a while ago, that people could still pick you up where you were phoning from. So yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it must be interesting to sort of constantly have to think about how the technology is different for your book.
Yeah, you have to make sure you don't say anything. Yes, that you don't. It is interesting, and you have to be careful of things like how many television stations there were or weren't at the time when the news was on. Because it wasn't news at 10, it was BBC was news at 9. And I've read some books where they said we were all sitting there glued to the news stations. There were no news stations when somebody had written this book. So you do have to make sure that you're accurate about what was happening.
But at the same time, because it's such recent history, I don't think it's like anything like you don't consciously pick up that it's like set kind of in the past. You know what I mean? They still feel fresh and kind of relatively modern.
Yeah, well, yes, I hope so. I mean, it's nice if it is sort of fresh anyway. So, but I mean, I picked up a book that was set in the 70s, and I think one of the first lines was something like talking about the landline. Well, nobody talked about the landline because nobody had anything but a landline. You know, they didn't have mobiles, so they wouldn't talk about landlines. You know, so it's that sort of thing that jars. And I think that's because I was, you know, I've been an editor for a very long time as well, and so I'm always checking, you know, for things that always check that what you can and can't say in fiction and non-fiction.
Do you edit your own books, or is that not possible?
Well, I do to a certain extent. I work really hard on timelines because I don't write in a you know, so I don't write sort of chapter 1 and go through to the end. I write, oh, I think I fancy that scene, and oh, I fancy that scene. So I write all over the place. And then when I piece it together, I really have to check that it does follow the proper timeline. And so what I tend to do is use a calendar for dates and things and times. And so every chapter I put what day of the week it is, what time, you know, if it's the afternoon, you know, that chapter might be in the morning, because sometimes you can find, you know, you've got an afternoon chapter that's followed by a morning chapter or something silly like that. So I literally go through, I print everything out and then go through it with, you know, times and dates to make sure that it's, you know, I mean, I remember on the last one, I think she had 2 curries in one day, you know, or something like that, and just, oh, that was a bit silly, you know. So yes, I do try and work very hard on the structure of the book. For things like proofreading, that it's really difficult to look at your own work. I mean, I can go through something 5 times, and I do proofreading, but your own work, you just see what you thought you'd written. So, you know, I've looked at something, I thought, do you know, I've read this 5 times and I've still only just picked up that extra O in the word because I thought it was no, but I'd got no, you know, like that. So yes, you always need somebody else to read and do some editing work for you.
Sam wants to know if there's a structure to your writing day.
No, in a word. I try and write in the morning because I'm brighter in the morning than I am in the afternoon, and I like having a read in the afternoon. So I tend, and if I can, I write early. So, but at the moment I'm not right. Well, apart from the book that I am, sorry, excuse me. Apart from the thriller that I am trying to put together, which is taking me forever. I'm waiting to see what's happening with Hannah and Red Dog, because you know they're bringing. You know, I won't know how quickly they're bringing the others out, and number 5 will be in January. So, you know, I've got to sort of think about that. I keep thinking about number 6. When I get fed up, I think, oh, well, let's do another Hannah. Because I like it.
So Sam wants to know if you read. Sorry? Sam wants to know if you read crime while you're writing crime, or do you find that off-putting?
I do find it off-putting sometimes. I've been reviewing books for the Arbiturian, and I just read whatever really, but mainly it does tend to be crime. But most of them are so different to my own stuff. I mean, it does put me off sometimes when I read something so brilliant and I think, oh my God, you know, I wish I could do that. So that's a bit off-putting. But I've read a lot of other books that are not crime, and that is nice to just, and I think it really helps to read other people's work, because you can say, why is that sentence so beautiful? How did that happen? Why don't I write a sentence like that? You know, I think it's a good thing to check how other people do things, and also you know, perhaps the other way around as well. If somebody's done something, you think, well, actually that was really clanky. Is mine like that? You know, does mine get clanky like that? So, yeah.
So when you're writing reviews, do they do they send you the books to review, or do you choose what you want to review?
Some I've chosen, some I've asked for, some I get sent, and well, the one that I've most recent, well, the next one that will come out in the Arbiturian is Louise Beach's That's the Way We're Human. It's absolutely fabulous book. It's really lovely. And I read The Last House on Needless Street, which I thought was fantastic, really, really good. So yes, so I don't because I only do, I don't know, maybe 2 a month for the, I probably read them more quickly, but they appear slower sometimes. I don't want to promise that I'd review something and then not be able to do it. So I'm reading Sarah Hillary's Fragile. That's my one that I'm reading at the moment. It's Fragile, which again is very different for her, because hers are usually police procedurals, and this one is a standalone, and it's beautifully written again. So yes. Right.
I just finished The Cursed Girls by Caro Ramsey.
All right. Good.
Different.
Mm-hmm.
To what I would normally read, but interesting. I've got lots to talk to her about.
Good.
Yeah. One of my favourite things to ask people is, who are your favourites, or who are your favourite authors? I call them your shut up and take my money authors. The people you'll just buy. Like, I have too many of them. You would be one of mine, because I love Hannah Weybridge, so I'd just buy any Hannah Weybridge.
Oh, that's really kind. I don't know, really. I've been I always like Louise Beach's books, so because I like her, I suppose, as well, and I love the way she writes. And Sarah Hillary, that I've just done, but I've been introduced to some new ones recently, which was what's it called? Lenny and I haven't got the book with me, so I won't talk about it. But I think I tend to go back to really old favourites if I need to. I like Gissing and Dickens and people and that sort of thing. And I quite like when other people write and they use sort of conventions that Dickens has used or something, especially with names and things like that. So I do enjoy going back to books that I studied, as an English literature student, or French as well, because I did French. Yeah. So, and I'm not going to name any other names because I'll probably forget the one that I most need to say.
Fair enough. Andrew wants to know if there's any chance of your books being adapted for TV. They'd make a great TV series.
There's a TV fairy up there. Yes. No, I haven't had any approaches. So as much as I'd love that, I think they would be quite good for TV, but I don't think they're cinematic. Put it that way. I think my ones.
Yeah, I think they'd be a really good, sort of kind of TV show that you'd watch, like in the evening.
Yeah, I think
evening TV.
I don't think there would be long series or anything like that. I think maybe a two-parter, or maybe putting a couple of books together to make 4 or something like that. But I don't think that. Or I mean, because sometimes you get a one-off, don't you? Sort of like a 2-hour one-off show. That would be perfect for me.
So we just need to send off some messages to
Yes, if you can go up to the TV fairies, Netflix, please. Listen.
I keep saying this to authors. I feel like we need to have a UK CBC representative who contacts Netflix with all of our ideas for ones that make really good shows. I think we should just have a campaign to Netflix.
Yeah, good idea.
My dad says hello.
Hi, David.
He likes to ask a question, and he's not put it on yet, but I know he's my dad, so I know what he likes to ask. He likes to ask a question about how you find marketing as an author.
Well, I I think it's really difficult. I mean, so many of us are find it difficult to push ourselves. I think we ought to push each other. I think that works actually quite often, because I could talk about another author's books and say how wonderful they are and how wonderful that author is and how she writes or he writes and blah blah blah. But when you try and say things about yourself, it sometimes sounds as though you're really blowing your own trumpet and I look at people who do it well, and they say, this fascinating book with da 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 da, and I think, how did you write that? I find that really difficult to write it about my own books. But I do try hard, and I do sort of like talks there, when one could appear in public, and I like doing that, and I think that's fun. I like interacting with people, so I do, and I've done sort of library talks and that sort of thing, crime panels at Crime Fest. But I think really it's wonderful if you've got a good marketing department in your publishers, because that helps. It helps when somebody else is saying it for you, even if you think you're brilliant. It's much nicer if somebody else says it for you in your books,
I think I find most of my new authors either through our interviews, which is really good because you have to read like new books to interview a new author, so that's excellent, or through, like you were saying, other people's recommendations. So if someone I know is like an author like you or my dad or someone that I know and know their taste in books says to me these are really good, then I would go and look those books up, and I found some of my favorite authors that way.
Yeah, I think I well, most of my friends read a lot as well. They're not necessarily on Twitter, and we'll be sitting there now these days on the phone, and they'll say, "Oh, have you read X?" And I say, "Oh, no, what's that about?" We'll sort of have a chat about that, and that's really nice. And I think personal recommendations are lovely. If if your friends read it, or somebody likes the same sort of books as you, or even different books really, so introduce you to new authors. And I chat, in the bookshops as well, chat to people, and see what they recommend as well as my own books. No, I think marketing is a sort of black art, really, isn't it? It's sort of, if you've been paid a huge advance and you're published by the big publishers, they move heaven and earth to get their money back, but not necessarily for mid-range authors or in a smaller publisher. So you just have to work your socks off, sort of doing publicity, little publicity things where you can, and hopefully word of mouth. I mean, I think word of mouth is a really good, it's lovely on, Twitter's good and Facebook, but word of mouth as well is fun when somebody says, comes up and says, "Oh, I bought your book because somebody else recommended it." And it's all really, sometimes it's quite interesting because somebody I would think would never have bought one of my books, sort of says hello. Oh, excuse me. Just gonna have a cat throwing up. Sorry. Oh, thank you. Never worked with animals and children. Yes, I think, and somebody who I didn't know said, "Oh, I really, I bought that. Really, actually, it was a bit of an odd compliment because he said, 'Oh, I bought your book,' and I thought it was really good. I was surprised, and I thought, oh. Thank you. Thank you for buying it. Thank you for saying it's good. Thank you perhaps not for saying you were surprised." So I think Sam has said, did I get nervous before events? And yes, and I think everybody does to a certain extent. And you always want it to be better than it ever is going to be sometimes, I think. And I think if you don't have a certain amount of apprehension and butterflies, you don't have the adrenaline to get you through, really. And it's really lovely when you get to the other end and think, oh, few people laughed, or somebody did this or somebody enjoyed that. But yes, I think it would be, if you were blasé about it, I don't think it would be a very good interview or a very good panel or talk.
No, I think you're right. I think probably, do you find it worse to do online or like live events?
I much prefer live. Yeah, I think when you're online, it's where I can see myself, which I can't see myself when I'm doing it face to face. I see everybody else and not me. I think it's quite off-putting seeing myself most of the time. So yes, I do, and I think it's lovely if you get a reaction as well that you can see. So I've just about managed to get a launch party in for Perdition's Child before lockdown, and I read at the beginning of the launch, and I suddenly looked up and I suddenly realised that it was absolutely silent, and everybody was sort of like just listening, and I thought, oh, wasn't that wonderful? I really felt really fantastic, because it felt so precious, and that was the last time.
See, you would think I would be okay with like groups of people because I'm a teacher. But if you put me in front of a group of adults or someone to talk to, absolutely freaks me out massively. Can't do it. Get really shy. Hate it.
I find sometimes in a group as well, if it's a less formal, less structured talk, people start asking very odd questions, and it can be intrusive, and you need somebody there who will step in and move the conversation away. When I went to the local library with Dancers in the Wind, about prostitutes, and this man just sort of started on about, so basically, had I ever been a prostitute? Did I know the place up the road where, and the librarian just had to shut him up in the end, because it was just getting worse and worse. Thinking, no. And even if I had been a prostitute, why would I tell you? I should have wound him up and said yes.
Apart from that, what's like the most bizarre question you've been asked?
I don't know. Bizarre questions. This one. What's the most bizarre question you've been asked? I don't know. I think when people really ask intrusive questions, more about your personal life than and something that wasn't a question to me, but was amusing to me when I was at the last Crime Fest, actually. So it must have been 2019, and a woman I'd been chatting to, because we'd sort of been walking around and had a chat, and I said, oh, do you write at all? And she said, well, I always thought I'd write one of the great literary novels. And then I thought, well, I'm never going to get round to doing that. So I think I could manage a mediocre crime book. And I just thought, how rude is that? So I just said, oh, I do hope you aspire a little higher. But yeah, I think bizarre questions. People get hooked on prostitution now. If that was the thing, and yeah, I haven't had too many. It tends to be more, sort of like personal things, and you just sort of think, get a grip,
Makes sense. Sam wants to know. She says Red Dog are a great team. How did that collaboration come about?
Actually, via Matthew Smith at Urbane, because when that I knew they were closing, he said, I know Sean, would you like an introduction? And I said, yes, please. And so he wrote to both of us the same email, and I didn't hear for a while, and then I thought I better give him a nudge, you know. And then we had a very long conversation on the phone, and I thought, yeah, they sound good. I could work with you, and then sent the contract and I signed it. So for all 5 books, and then first option on any other Hannah Raybridge book.
Good.
So that was very kind of Matthew. A lot of the Urbane authors went to Bloodhound, but a couple of us went to Red Dog.
Yeah, there's some good authors with Red Dog.
Yeah, and I know some of the new ones as well that have just come on board. So, you know, like Louise Mangos, I've known her for years, and Mark Mays, and yeah, I think, can't remember this. There's another couple I think come from. I don't know them personally, but another couple came from Urbane as well. So yeah, it's good. Small world. You have to be careful.
Yes, there are a few Red Dog authors in the group, I think.
Yes, yeah, probably, yeah.
So, how many Hannah Waybridge series books are you planning?
Well, I don't know is the answer. I did think 7 max, and then when I'd done number 4, you know, and I couldn't think of what I wanted to do for number 5, and then that did come to me. So I thought, right, you know, so, and that was, as I said, you know, I wrote that during lockdown, so that was really good for me. And I did say to you, you know, I said to you earlier about the one that's set in the future, which would be the finishing, which would be the one that wrapped it up. So maybe, but then again, you know, who knows, I might find a few more bits to put in. I mean, we must be moving, you know, we'll be moving into 95, so we're gradually getting going forwards on this. But also I think, you know, she's had all these things happen to her in a very short space of time. You know, she must be exhausted apart from anything else. I would be.
Well, do we find out, will there be a resolution for Hannah? Will there be like trying to think about how to phrase it without giving any of the stories away, but you kind of know where I'm going. Like,
yeah, I think I mean, I think for instance is will she partner up with somebody? I think, and obviously in the first book it's Tom, and I'm not giving anything away, I don't think, by saying that was the police officer she interviewed and they became friendly. But the trouble is with having a partner, they sort of stop you doing things. So the resolution might come at the end of a series, if you see what I mean, because that would be the end of her getting into all these scrapes and investigations. So I think, yeah, I think, I don't want to give it away, but she does have possibilities with men anyway.
yeah, there are a few choices.
There are a few choices.
Sam wants to know what advice you'd give to new or aspiring authors.
Read, write. I would say the most important thing is to keep writing. And it doesn't matter what it's like, just write and write. I was given some, a literary editor said to me, write your first book and then put it in a drawer and leave it there, because then you get rid of the bits that you want to write about your life or something like, you know, any sort of, you want to settle scores and things like that. And I did that. I still have a book in my stuck away somewhere. God knows where it is now. But there was a number 1 that never got, you know, I think I did show it to a few people. I did, because I knew quite a few agents then, and they wanted to change it and everything. And anyway, it went. I think it's really important to write and write and write, and it doesn't matter what it's like, and it doesn't matter if you don't show it to anybody. It's great if you can find a group of people that you can write with. Sadly, I've never found a group that I've particularly fitted with, or they fitted with me. One of the ones that I went to, it was a bit ad hoc, you know, so there'd be different people each time, and so there was no real sense of continuity. So that didn't, but I did, you know, I do chat to other authors a lot, and especially, you know, we had a little group that was local, which then got stopped by by COVID. But that there again, that's nice to talk with people who understand. And I think, you know, the group that is the Debut 20 group have done really well. If you've seen them on Twitter, and I know a couple of, well, one of them lives right near me actually, and somebody I've known for a long time, and Victoria, who won the People's Book Award, they had a lot of group therapy, if you like, and which I think is really useful. I mean, it's nice to show people what you've written, but I would always say be careful who you show things to, because if it's somebody, if it's a close friend, it probably won't work. You know, they won't be, they'll either say how wonderful it is, or they'll say how awful it is, you know, they don't like it. And so I think you've really got to find somebody who you'd be happy showing something to. I mean, some people show their other halves, don't they? And I think, you know, that's great if you've got that confidence with somebody. But I think the most important thing is to write, because I think a bit like the woman who was always going to write the great literary novel, it's really easy to think you would be absolutely fantastic as a writer if only I wrote. And so you don't ever write anything, because, you know, in a way that's what's stopping you writing, because you think, well, if I don't write, there's the possibility is that I would have been excellent. And I think you have to write and face the possibility that you might not be excellent, but you might find that other people can work with you and help you with your work, you know, publishers and agents and editors who can actually help you through. But I think and I really think, you know, you have to read. I mean, I was quite stunned once when I met somebody who was writing a children's book, and I said, oh, that's you know, quite interesting. And she said, oh yes, I'm doing this and this. And I said, oh, have you read any children's books? No. Have you got any children? No. And so, sort of, just by virtue of the fact that she was once a child, I think, but she hadn't read anything that was currently being published in and, you know, children's books are a lot of them are fantastic these days. I love children's books, you know, so especially young adult and middle grade stuff is brilliant. And I think to not read what you're comparing yourself to is a bit dumb. Saying if you so yes, reading and writing all the time, and don't get disillusioned.
Good advice.
Because don't get disillusioned, because you never know. In your book, you know, you might go 1 year and you try it out with a few people and it doesn't work, and then the next year things have changed and suddenly, you know, your book will fit in somewhere. And very often people are looking for things. I mean, that's why I think, you know, the small indie publishers are so much they take many more risks with authors, because they're not trying to get the next J.K. Rowling or, you know, whoever, Joanne Harris. You know, it's they because they're never going to get those on small publishers. You know, they're never going to get those big names, so they're prepared to go out on a limb for the smaller names. And so, yeah.
Andrew wants to know where he can get your books from.
Right. Well, at the moment there are none on. There are no ebooks available, because as soon as the publisher closes, they come off Amazon automatically. You know, that's just finished. You can still get them on book.org. You can order from there, which supports local bookshops. So you can still get the physical books, and hopefully you'll be able to get them again in their new covers soon.
Keep asking questions, Andrew, and you might win one.
Yes, actually, Andrew, keep going. And if anybody would prefer, now I offered Perdition's Child as the book, but if anybody would prefer one of the early one, anyone just said, well, I haven't read any of them, so I'll go for number one. I'd be very happy to make that the book, the prize. If let's find out who's. Perhaps it's not the best question, but the most questions. And Andrew's been going.
Yeah, Andrew's doing well. Sam says she can't get the image of you and the knife out of her head. Have you acted out any other scenes to help you understand how it would work in real life?
I'm not going into that one, Sam. I do walk around a lot, sort of, because I sort of think, now if I was doing that, and how do I, movements? Because I think movements are quite important. And I think maybe because I was short-sighted for such a long time, that I tend to see people like Sam with the limp. I tend to recognise people by their walk very often, and their silhouette and walk, because I can't see the detail if I haven't got glasses on or something. So I'm quite conscious of limps and the way and Sam has a limp, and that sort of identifies him. So yes, I concentrate. So I do walk around quite a lot, and I also walk around to make sure I can do, what I can do with. So I'm sitting here with my hands, but they're down here, nobody can see them. But if I can, I'm making sure that I can do the two things at once, or something like that, or falling forward and having somebody step on your hat, that sort of thing. I'm an actor, really.
You told me a nice story when we were doing the promo about someone else that you immortalized in your book.
Sheridan. Yeah, we were at a meeting, and she just sat there and said, "Oh, I've got a bucket list, and on my bucket list is being a character in a book." So I said, "Well, there you are. You are a character." And she was a character in number 4, and she appears briefly at the beginning of number 5. So that's and there's another one as well who is. People who've read the books know how often Hannah has takeaway curries, from the local takeaway, and they are. It is a restaurant that I go to, and they are so lovely in there. They've been there since the 90s, so, and they are absolutely charming people. And when and I had my post-launch dinner, quite a lot of us had dinner there, and they gave me a bottle of Moët, not to share, to take home. And anyway, in number book 5, I thought, oh, there's going to be a scene in a restaurant. Well, we might as well do it there. And I said to one of the guys, well, would you like to be named? Can I use your name? And he was absolutely delighted, apparently. I mean, he just said yes. He said he would be honoured, like this. But apparently he told my family that he'd sort of screenshot everything and told everybody that he was going to be a character in a book. And he is thrilled. So, and he reads everything. He's read all my books, and he reads all the blogs and things like that as well. And he'll come up and say, "You went on that, you went on a helicopter to one of the gas platforms, And I think, I did, He tells me about my life. So that is lovely. He's great. He's one of my number 1 fans. So.
Excellent. And me and Sam are going to be high up there as well. Sam says, thank you for another great interview. We're actually out of time. You've always got so much to talk about. She looks forward to reading Hannah books for years to come. Me too.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to sort out who gets the prize and send me an address, name and address?
Well, we'll message the person who wins the prize and get them to send you their name and address directly.
Okay, fine, right. So, well, thank you very much for having me again and for all your lovely questions.
No worries. Do you want to just give us a reminder about the Hannah Weybridge books before we finish?
I can do this. So we've got Dances in the Wind is number 1. Death's Silent Judgment is number 2. Songs of Innocence at the moment, but it's going to be Innocence spelt TS in the next one because I prefer that. And then the last one is Perdition's Child. And I love this character. I love this cover. I think it's so evocative of what the story is about. So I really like that one. So if it's whoever wins, if they would like to tell me which book they would like and who they'd want it dedicated to, I'd be very happy to send it. Toot sweet.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Oh, what a nice comment to finish on. So I'm going to read you Laura Hamilton's comment to finish on. She said, "Thank you for an informative and entertaining interview. Another author added to my want to read list."
Oh, thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you.
That's a nice way to end, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much indeed. And also you'll be hearing more from me about about book 5.
I am looking forward. Well, you know I'm buying a copy.
Thank you very much indeed. It was lovely.
Thanks
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Thank you.